Do you have a medical question that's just too embarrassing for your personal physician? Dr. Marie Savard from Good Morning America will answer any questions you have right now on It's Your Call. You know how it is. You have this problem, this issue, this itch, this thing, and you want to know if it's serious or dangerous, but you're just too embarrassed or even scared to ask your doctor. So what do? You ask Dr. Marie Savard, who says no question is out of line. Hello, everyone. It's good to have you with us. I'm Lynn Doyle, and I'm sure if you're like me, there's been a time or two that you've had a medical question that just makes you a little bit uncomfortable. Well, if that's the case, there's a new book you might want to get. It's called Ask Dr. Marie, Straight Talk and Reassuring Answers to Your Most Private Questions. And it's written by Dr. Marie Savard, an ABC News medical contributor that appears regularly on Good Morning America. Ask Dr. Marie is her third book. So good to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Lynn. It's always great to be here. Thanks.
Why do you think it is that we have such an issue having a straight conversation with our doctors? What is it with us?
You know, think of the last time you were at the visit at the gynecologist. You're sitting there with that gown open in the front, totally exposed for the most part, sitting on the table. You're vulnerable. And I think women get to the doctor's office and they lose their voice. Suddenly they forget. What were those important questions? The doctor's racing in and out. So I think it's a matter of we don't really have time, we don't feel comfortable, and we think our doctors are just too busy and maybe we're not important enough.
But we're paying them to treat us and to advise us. So how do we overcome that? How do we empower ourselves when we are in the doctor's office and get the answers that we need?
Yeah, I'm asked this all the time. I do think this is one time we have to kind of be organized. We have to put our sort of organized cap on and say to ourselves, let's go prepared. Sit down ahead of time, jot down what those three most important questions are. And if it is pain with sex, that's something that came up so often. In fact, I've been speaking about that women in their 50s and 60s who suddenly are out there thinking about, can I have sex again? They're afraid to talk to their doctors because they think it's not something the doctors are going to talk to them about. So write it down. Don't be embarrassed. That's what I say. Your doctor has heard it all. He or she knows exactly what's going on. And I think the more you give them information up front, they're going to help you. And if they can't, they're going to smile and they're going to try to find the answers in some way.
Well, you know, you just said something very interesting. You said he or she. Do you find that women in particular feel more comfortable talking to a female doctor because we think, for whatever reason, you could probably associate with what I'm talking about better than a male?
I think today that's the case. I remember when I first started practicing in the 1980s, believe it or not, that I'm that old, that actually women didn't want another woman doctor, especially to do an exam down there. I remember they were uncomfortable with that. Then I would do it because I was with a male partner and he was more uncomfortable. So I would do it. I would do that pap test, and afterwards the woman would say to me, oh, this was so much better. I wasn't as embarrassed. I'm not as afraid to ask questions. So I think what's great is that today women are really comfortable, whoever their physician might be. And I think men have been they've been used to taking care of women for such a long time. But for women, I think it's exciting that women can ask for a woman and have a choice.
Well, of course, if you do have a choice, that's great. And we always encourage you to talk to your doctor if you have questions. But if you find yourself, you know, someone who just can't do it, you can't bring yourself to ask those questions, or you're just too embarrassed when you get there, whatever the cause, that's why I suggest people get this book, because I'll tell you, folks, she covers just about everything in here. When you say that they've heard it all, she has heard it all, and she has answered pretty much every embarrassing question. How did you compile those specific questions for this book?
Well, first of all, I experienced a lot of it. And as I say in the introduction, and I hope my husband's not listening right now, because I really, as a woman who not only went through puberty and all the childbearing and had 3 children, but I've actually gone through menopause as well. And so I'm experiencing firsthand a lot of the things that I talk about. And then I was lucky enough to have a practice through the years where women, I don't know, I just always took the time to listen, and I just heard unbelievable questions. And then I guess in the work that I do now, people email you. You just wouldn't believe the questions that women are willing, and men for that matter, to email. They
Yes,
don't even know who I
would.
am, and they're asking me these amazing questions.
Well, you know why I'm laughing? Because that's what we did. We offered the opportunity to folks to email in some questions for you. We're going to share those with you in a couple of minutes. I do want to give you an opportunity to be part of our programming here. I want to know what you think about this. So if you have your questions, your thoughts, your opinions, you know how it works. You go ahead and you email me. You can log on to csnphilly.com. Then you put in It's Your Call or IYC under the search button. That'll take you to my webpage. You can leave us a comment for Dr. Marie, and she will get those directly. You can also email me here at the show. That's TCN_IYC at ComcastNetwork.com. You can also find us on Facebook, MySpace, and YouTube. And I mentioned that I did solicit some questions from our Facebook friends in particular, and we have some questions that we're willing to pose to you if you're willing to answer.
I'm willing to give it a shot, and I don't know what these questions are,
no,
so
let's preface that she has no idea what these questions are, but she's a good sport. All right, here's your first one. Quote, I am wondering how often you should have sex in a relationship that's been going on for a while, like more than 20 years. My girlfriends seem to be doing it more than me, but my husband says they must be lying.
Okay, first of all, they probably are lying. I do have a chapter in the book about sex, and I talk about some of the research that was done that showed with each decade of life, believe it or not, sadly enough, we start having sex less and less often. So women, I'll just, I don't know how old the viewer is, but let's say she's 50 years old. On average, a woman at age 50 tends to have sex only about once, sometimes twice a week. When she's 40, it might be 2 times a week, and then 30, often more. I kind of think of the old, I was told this, I don't know if it's where this thing came from, but the idea of putting beads in a jar. I was told when you were a young woman, when you were before marriage,
when you were married
forbid,
or whatever, right?
Early marriage, yes. Let's talk about early marriage, because we only have sex within the context of marriage, of course. So you put the bead in the jar every time you have sex. As time goes on, early on, you filled that jar up, and then you start, as you get older, to start removing the beads. Guess what? You never remove those beads.
Those marbles are in there long after you're dead.
How much is normal is what is important to you and your partner, and I think what's more important than the number of times you have sex is, what is your relationship like? Because if it's cuddling up at night and feeling really good about your partner, that's more important than the physical act itself.
Now, I know that this book is primarily directed toward women, but I'm wondering for the men who are watching if there are embarrassing questions that they have as well, particularly when it comes to in the bedroom.
Well, yes, because sometimes men don't understand what women go through vaginally through the childbearing, postpartum. I know, for example, after I had I had twins the second time around, and I had such incredible vaginal pain after sex. I didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't realize at first, and here I am, even a doctor, that after childbearing, when you're breastfeeding, your hormone levels go way down. It's as though you're already in the throes of menopause. And now I kind of remembered in retrospect why the gynecologist left me that prescription for the hormone cream to use. He knew, and it was a he in those days, what was going to happen to me. And so I think men need to understand that there are physical reasons why women aren't interested in sex often after children, for example, and then, of course, after menopause is a whole other story.
Okay, that leads us into this next question, believe it or not. We have another one. It says, quote, how soon after giving birth should you have intercourse, and can you do anything before then, like fooling around?
Great.
She didn't specify what fooling around is, so you take it from here, Doc.
Right. Okay. So in general, the old wives' tale was that after you have a baby, that it takes a full 6 weeks before the cervix, because if you think about it with a vaginal delivery, and that's what we're assuming, your cervix, the mouth of the womb, has to open up this big enough to have a baby's head come through, and then it takes about 6 weeks for it to close up nice and tight. So doctors used to say, no research behind it, but they used to say, give it 6 weeks before you become sexually active. And that tends to be the time when you go back for that follow-up visit. Now, if you ask gynecologists today, they're going to say to you, that's just a rough sort of idea. Maybe at 2 or 3 weeks, if you're comfortable, if you're not having heavy bleeding, you might be able to have sex. Some gynecologists may not feel comfortable with that. So I can tell you by 6 weeks, pretty much everyone should be comfortable with the idea of it.
So it's not really like you're concerned about infection or like a wound or something like that?
Well, yes, in a way you are, because the cervix is so stretched out and sometimes even tears a little bit. That's why they say wait 6 weeks to everything heals. So don't start having sex too soon. On the other hand, that's probably too long. So if you and your partner are interested, and when I say interested, I remember I wasn't, quite frankly. I mean, that was the last thing that was on my mind. 'Cause